there was always an urge to create. There was an urge to do something significant, to do something different. We have commissioned or we have set up more than 7 to 8 sulfonation plants across the world. The important thing is obviously giving a word and then keeping it. The only way I would say is that, go and face the situation head on. Our job is to, of course, create value, deliver value, but the value has to be accepted by the customer ultimately. I think it's a truth that everything will pass. Nothing is permanent. Surround yourself with good people, talented people, but good people, because ethics is very important.
So today we have with us U. Shekhar, co-founder and managing director of Galaxy Surfactants. Welcome to the show, Shekhar.
Thank you, Rohan.
And so let me tell you more about Shekhar. So he, along with 4 of his friends, founded the Galaxy Group in 1980. And what if I told you that daily 9 out of 10 Indian consumers use this company's ingredients at least once in their daily routine? What if I told you that here is an Indian company, relatively unheard of, but which has grown at a staggering CAGR of 29% in terms of revenues as well as profitability over the last 39 years. And it today supplies to over 1750 plus customers across 75 plus countries, and which includes ingredients for some of the most popular brands, not only locally, but globally. So welcome to the Galaxy Surfactants Limited, one of the leading players in the world of surfactants and specialty care ingredients, exclusively focused on catering to the home and personal care industry. So Galaxy has grown into a rupees 27 billion company today, comprising of manufacturing plants, 3 in India, 1 in Egypt, 1 at New Hampshire, USA. Company has employs around 1,400 people, and Galaxy focuses on being a business partner to its end customers. Galaxy Research Center, which is located at Navi Mumbai, is also recognized by the Mumbai University for awarding doctoral degrees. And Galaxy is one of the few Indian companies to have received the special award for TPM excellence from JIPM Japan. And in recognition of all this entrepreneur skills, U. Shekhar was awarded the Distinguished Alumnus Award by, I think, every institute he studied in. So UDCT, Chemical Engineering, then SIES, and IIM Calcutta. So thank you, Shekhar, for joining us, and it's my privilege and honor to host you here.
Thank you, Rohan.
And so as I shared with you, this show is focused on learning through stories. Yeah. So, beyond this whole entrepreneur journey, which we'll talk about a little later, can you tell us a little bit about your personal life journey beyond all these accomplishments?
Yeah, Rohan, born in 1954 in Matunga, Mumbai, grew up in Sion, studied in SIWS school, Vadala. After SSC, 2 years in SIS college, completed inter-science there, then joined UDCT, did 4 years of chemical engineering there, then worked for a year with Hindustan Lever Research Center, 76 to 77, then went to IIMCAL, completed 2 years there. I think the thought or the idea of setting up something and doing something independent got formed while I was in the campus at IIM Calcutta. Joined Lupin Laboratories for a year, contributed significantly to them in terms of creating the basic design and kickstarting the project for their anti-TB drugs, ethambutol hydrochloride and trimethoprim at Ankleshwar. Then 1980, June 22nd, we commissioned our plant at Tarapur with the name Galaxy Chemicals. So 22nd of June happens to be our foundation day, which we have celebrated every year the last 40 years. We celebrated our 40th foundation day on 22nd of June 2020. And here we are, Got married to Vijaya in 1984. Have a son, Karthik, who teaches chemical engineering at University of Berkeley. And daughter Nandini is doing her 2-year MBA at Harvard. So that's family. I have my father who is here, 95 years old. And so it has been a nice journey, a journey full of events over the last 66 years. So along the way, as I said, the Galaxy was formed by 5 school and college friends. And 3 of us were together right from the age of 5.
Wow.
Joined in colleges. So Galaxy was founded by these 5 friends who came together with a simple desire to be independent and do something significant. So that's in short, a personal story.
So let me take you back to the core. So what has been your core values and leadership philosophy, and how did those got built?
See, ours was a middle class family in Sion. My father, after his SSC, joined as a typist cum stenographer in Voltas Limited. I think sometimes in 1944 or 45 or so. And then somehow he discovered a flair for sales. After maybe 10 or 15 years or so, he became a sales officer selling air conditioners and refrigerating equipments. And he took a very major decision sometimes in 69, I think when he was 42 years old. One day suddenly he said he's quitting his job and becoming an entrepreneur. This did create quite a bit of upheaval and tumult, in the family, because my mother thought that, and indeed it was so, that he had no savings. What is he going to do? How is he going to take care of? How are we going to take care of the family? I mean, as I said, maybe, he had also taken some loan on his house that we were living in. And then we started wondering, but my father was very, very firm. And with his, help of his relationship, I mean, he had cultivated a good number of salesmen in Voltas. As a matter of fact, his business was, he quit Voltas and he became a dealer of Voltas. As a matter of fact, he didn't require any money because one of the dealers of Voltas said, I'm willing to make you an equal partner, but you have to do all the work. I know I'm too old to do all the work. You do all the work, bring in business. And somehow my father, with his hard work and relationship, I think was able to prove that, his decision was right in a matter of just a year or so. So in a way, I think my father was influence. Maybe the desire or the seed was sown in my mind at that time that I decided to be an entrepreneur. I can decide to be an entrepreneur. And I remember, one important thing happened in UDCT. Sometimes, we used to, of course, go to the library for various requirements. And I chanced upon a book by what is called Small Business Publications, which talked about, these are the products, this is the capital investment, this is capacity, etc., etc. And I used to get fascinated, reading that particular book, apart from the books in chemical engineering. And some of the thought went, what if I were to, make some of these products? So that thought remained in the mind, So while at IIM Calcutta, one day I had a surprise visitor from one of my, again, school friend. And he said, listen, what do you intend to do after? So I said, I want to be in business. So he said, there are some friends of ours in Mumbai. They are also thinking along similar lines. Would you like to join them? I said, why not? So that's how we wrote to each other and formed a company unofficially through inland letters. And it slowly took shape. So the values that I talk about is fundamentally middle class values, where never my father knew about what I am doing or what I'm studying. He always used to ask sometimes my mother what class is he studying, etc. So nobody really influenced me. I was a reasonably good student, not in the top. I used to be in the top, let us say 15-20% or so. So which was, there was no need or anything like that. Anyway, our needs or wants were pretty small and taken care of. And so throughout this thing, it was one of, I was pursuing whatever I liked. I think even chemical engineering, somehow it came to me. Though I was possibly the last student to get into my batch because I scored the lowest. And I got into UDCT almost after 2 to 2.5 months of the term starting. And but one thing was very clear in my mind that I wanted to do chemical engineering because somehow chemistry caught a fancy, though I liked the physics, but physics didn't get into my head much. So I liked chemistry, and then I said, chemistry is the only, chemical engineering should be the only thing that I want to pursue. And that's how I pursued chemical. I really liked chemical engineering. I was a good student there again in UDCT. I think I would have been in the, maybe top 20% or so, and enjoyed whatever I was doing. And so setting up a chemical industry was a natural thought, but what to make, what to idea, I mean, none of that came into the head. I mean, it was only a desire. So that's how it is.
So if you have to describe the biggest childhood challenge, what would you say?
Not really. See, the childhood was pretty smooth, I would say. As I said, I mean, I was, it was only studies and nothing else. And I was a reasonably good, student. I passed all my, examinations at that time. I mean, you had to only depend upon yourself. And though we had a very, very big family, I would say that, one great thing was we had a big extended, family. My uncles and my aunts, and we always used to meet on a Saturday in our grandfather's house. Had said it is compulsory that everybody comes on a Saturday evening, and something like some 40 people will be there together. Lot of, let us say, noise, eating together. It was a fantastic time. So childhood was a pretty smooth time that we had. I don't think I ever felt that there was any challenge.
So my favorite question is that when you see a tree and all the fruits outside and all the successes, I think the roots in the soil had a huge role to play. What would you define as soil and roots in your life?
See, yes, there was always an urge to create. There was an urge to do something significant, to do something different. This was there always in my mind. But of course, I realized sometimes in, again, 77, when I was working in Hindustan Lever, then listen, if I have to be in business, I don't know much about, selling. I don't know much about, finance. So it will be good to do an MBA. And so that's how I went for studies in MBA. I think the first time that I applied to for management, I didn't get selected. I think in the group discussion, not a single word came out of my mouth. And it made me reflect. So one very important difference that was made to me was I attended a public speaking course in Nazareth Speakers Academy. It was an amazing transformational education for me. And so in second year, I mean, when I again applied to, and I participated in the group discussion, I knew in my participation itself that I will get selected. I mean, so I was pretty confident that I would get, selected. And that's how, so this suddenly gave me a lot of boost. And another important thing at that time was I took a transcendental meditation course, at the age of 24, where all the other participants were, something like 40 above, or I was possibly the youngest guy. And I should say that, it really, a lot of reflection, and then it did really make quite a bit of difference to me in terms of myself and my possibly, personality.
Probably it made you more centered
Uh,
at an early age. It made you more centered at an early age.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So there was no, flitting from, one to the other. I think pretty much whatever I desired, I think it happened. I mean, it certainly happened in a way I wanted it to be. And so even if you say our forming of the organization or forming of the partnership just happened,
And in all of these, what would you call as one or two events who shaped Shekhar's personality? So few things you shared about that course or that transcendental meditation program.
Yes.
Is there anything else which zooms out as a big event which made Shekhar who Shekhar is?
Yeah, so that was when I told you about the public speaking course, the
Hmm.
transcendental meditation. And when I worked in Lupin, I knew that I was going to be in Lupin for only a year or so.
Hmm.
But I wanted to give my best and I wanted to
Hmm.
contribute to the organization during this particular period of time.
Hmm.
So there was a gentleman named B.R. Pabi.
Hmm.
He had worked previously in NOSIL. NOSIL was the premier chemical industry at that
I
time,
remember. Hmm.
and he was retained as a consultant for that particular project because I was the first chemical engineer in Lupin. Okay,
Hmm.
so I engaged with him, and I did express my desire to him. And this man, was a very, very experienced chemical engineer, put his faith on me. He said, you go ahead and do the entire designing of the plant.
Ah.
And he gave me all the freedom, and so I had an opportunity to deal with all the detail engineering consultants. I was there
In
in
your first year.
yeah, just in that here going and dealing with all the statutory government authorities in terms of making plans, submission of plans, getting it approved. I traveled a lot. I would have gone to Ahmedabad in that 1 year, something like 10 times. I went to Aurangabad some, 5, 6 times. So this man, I think, he was a very important, influencer, in my life. What I liked about him was, the way he trusted and empowered you. And this made a significant, difference on me. I owe a lot to him, because during that particular period of time where it shapes your personality. I mean, in a way, it helped a lot because once we were into the organization, we knew that if we had to really grow the organization, it has to grow beyond the 5 founders, and we need to have people talented around us. And the only way is not only you spot talent, which is important, but how do you build talent? And the only way to build talent is to create platforms for them to grow, for them to achieve, for them to accomplish, for them to feel a sense of pride. And and I can tell you that today when we are a company who we call ourselves an EPC company, where we design, we do innovate, design, erect, commission, procure our plants.
Yes.
That thought of what is called being a good chemical engineering organization,
Hmm.
Mr. Pabi, certainly contributed a lot in terms of forming of and shaping of those particular thoughts. I would have been with him hardly maybe 5 or 6 months or so.
I remember reading about in 2004, your team set up a plant in Taloja all by yourself.
Yes, yes. Okay. See, what had happened was in the first commissioning plant, we had taken the help of Devi Power Gas. who were the detail engineers. And, that particular experience personally for me was a very harrowing experience because it took almost 14 months to really commission the plant. We are learning. And that made me, take a decision that we need to be self-dependent, We can't, it's not that there's nothing wrong with the consultant, but the consultants don't really know what we want, okay? I mean, our technology or our chemistry, maybe something unique which we know best, okay? And so we need to be dependent on ourselves. And that's why the seed of thought was shown that we become an, internally, competent organization. That's why we formed a process, a new process. We gave birth to a new process called NPT, New Projects and Technologies. And it took something like 10 to 12 years to mature. And possibly the first milestone was the EOU unit, where we commissioned the project in flat 3 days. And 3 days.
3 days?
3 days, yes.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, building on that, we commissioned our Egypt plant. Commissioning, when I say commissioning, after the erection is over, it goes live, means it starts producing the right quality product right from that time. Stabilization and other things. That is called a commissioning period. So the Egypt project, I think, again, went on stream in a matter of, let us say, 2 days. Similarly, another project that we did in 2010 in 24 hours. So
I think that 14 months was the commissioning time.
Yes. So the first time was where, we had gone into something which was necessary, important. The configuration was right. The decision to go to that plant was right, but we were not competent. We didn't have all the sort of skills. So we had to learn those skills, by making mistakes. Made a lot of mistakes and understood the technology. So absorption of technology, the first absorption of technology took almost that 14 months or so, which is what made the time harrowing. So a lot of learnings from there. We had, very, very dedicated, engineers and people. But then the fact was that we were not skillful and we had to learn those skills. And once we learned those skills, I think that really became the bedrock for all our future projects. Today we have commissioned or we have set up more than 7 to 8 sulfonation plants across the world. But that was the first. All the subsequent things became easy.
Look back in your life of all these years, was there a turning point in life which was a huge turn or a huge shift, a structural shift in the way you led, the way you looked at things?
Yeah. I think the important turning point for our organization was 1995.
The expansion time where I read that,
See, what had happened was we had achieved market leadership during that. We achieved market leadership in 1986 and we were, growing with our customers. We set up a number of new factories, particularly after liberalization when the market really exploded. Okay. I mean, as you know, liberalization was a turning point for India. It was also a turning point for our industry because till that time, personal care products, cosmetics were regarded as luxuries.
The import duties were huge import duties, I think.
Yeah. The excise duty on cosmetics was 117.5%, which came down to 17%, 17.5% or 18% post 1991. And the market really, exploded and we set up capacities. We grew with our customers' growth. But till that time, we had a particular technology, what we glorifiedly called appropriate technology. So it was appropriate during that particular period of time. But sometimes in 1993, in one of my dialogues with Unilever, they said, listen, we are entering an era where we are going to have a global harmonization of quality. What it means is that a Sunsilk made in India or in London or in Shanghai is going to be the same. Okay, so which means you have to make global quality products. So this, so I would say we got enough notice, but to execute and implement it, when we went to the drawing board, and here is where I told you the configuration was right. The capital cost of the project was more than our turnover at that time. Our turnover was some 29 crores and the bottom line was some 2.5 crores. And this project cost was something like 32 crores of rupees. So we wrote the project report. We went to various banks, financial institutions. We went to merchant bankers. We went to private equity. So all of them said, forget it. I think you don't have a right to dream. Your balance sheet doesn't support this project. So, I mean, we would have approached a lot of private equity funds and merchant banks during that particular period of time. I think I would have spent maybe going to various cities in India, a period of maybe 3-4 months or so. But then I came to the realization that I'm not going to get any money from here. So we said, what do we need to do? Because we knew that we had to do this project, because if we didn't do the project, we will be history, we will become irrelevant. So we had to go ahead with this particular project. And fortunately, what happens over the previous 14 years or so, we had built a good body of fixed deposit holders, our relatives and friends, who used to invest right from 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, 25,000 rupees. And they were all very happy with us because we used to pay handsome interest to them. And they were all very, very happy with us. And so I wrote to them a letter. I said, this is a great opportunity for you to become partners in our growth. And we are coming up with this private placement. We wanted to raise about 5.5 crores of rupees, something like 1 million shares at a premium of 45 rupees, so 5.5 crores. And I think it was fully welcomed by all these fixed deposit holders. They invested, right from 27,500 rupees to some people invested maybe 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs. But we had the 5.5 crores of rupees came from something like 600 investors. And so that was a very, very important turning point for us. With that, of course, 5.5 crores, we went to the banks. We told, hey, listen, we have equity. Now give us loans. And they gave us the loans because we had the equity, requisite amount of equity. So this was one of where we had to find our own way in terms of raising finance for the project.
My question is that, at that point of time, what kept you going? What was in your mind and your partner's mind in terms of that you have to make this change or you'll become irrelevant and all the doors seems to be closed? So what kept going?
Clearly, the fact was that we had to become a global company. So what to do was very right. How to do it was not very, very clear. And as I told you, the next about, let us say, 2 to 3 years, in terms of learning was a real tough time. As I said, we created a configuration which was a state of the art. I think our technology was possibly the only one of its kind in this part of the world. Okay, we went for the latest technology. It was the configuration was supposed to be totally computer controlled. But let me tell you that we didn't know anything about computer control. We didn't know anything about let us say, how to best utilize this configuration, what best way to do it. So we had to learn really by, the only way to learn was by doing. And when you do, a lot of mistakes happen. And what really kept us going was a lovely team of people. They were all charged up. They were all willing to put a lot of hard work, and young team of engineers. So that took, as I said, 14 months. So it was from 22nd of June 1997, on the day we switched on the first motor. But for it to come to steady state, it happened only in October 98. So it was a huge struggle during those time. And as you rightly said, I remember our CFO coming to me and said, we are living dangerously. And I think if we don't, in between, he said, if we don't become successful it will seriously bring down the house. And yes, I mean, here is where I was there in the factory, right in the front, working along with the engineers. We went through, obviously, during this particular period of time, there was a high level of stress, high level of tension. And my colleagues and my partners, I would say, what is it that you can do? You can only go forward with faith with confidence, because you know that you have to have this working or happening. And it did. And then from there, I mean, incidentally, I need to tell you that during this time, the configuration, initially it was supposed to be a 1 ton per hour project. And I still have to thank that Italian engineer called Giorgio Favoretto. I used to go along with him to look at various plants. And one day, in his own Italian accent, he said, Shekhar, are you going to be setting up a 1 ton per hour plant? I would advise you that you should go for 2 ton per hour. Because that is a minimum economic size. I think, thank God, and I think I should really thank him, because in the chemical industry, minimum economic size is very, very important. But then the 1 ton per hour itself was, at least 50% more than the India consumption. So 2 tons per hour was more than two times the Indian consumption. So that set us on a different challenge. Because what is important is you need to do the right thing. Okay, what is right at that particular point of time, and the right configuration was 2 tons per hour, which is what we did. And then what are the implications of the consequences of that we have to face? And that's sort of a different thinking. So that's how, from there, it said, now, if this is so, if we cannot look at only India as a market, we need to look at globe as a market. And then we set up our first goal of 25% has to come from exports in the next 5 years. And that's a different story.
One more question, that you said that there was a loving team of people and their belief in you.
Yeah.
On the other side, you also see all these FD holders, etc.
Yeah.
They also have that belief in you. What do you think was behind all this belief? What did you people do in formative years? What was
it's important that, as somebody said, responsibility is keeping your words to others. Now, throughout that particular period of 80 to 94, we took this fixed deposits, and the interest rate was 21%, and not a single time we had failed. Every single interest, whether it was monthly or quarterly, was paid. So our fixed deposits were very, very happy. As a matter of fact, when we withdrew the fixed deposit scheme sometimes in 2014, because we couldn't keep up with the government requirements.
Yeah.
So he said, why are you returning to us? Keep it with you. He said, no. I mean, there's a lot of questions from the government. We want to, close the fixed deposit scheme. So our fixed deposits were very, very happy because most of them, as you know, they're all from a salaried class, and they were getting a handsome interest during that entire period of time from a company on whom they could implicitly trust. So the important thing is obviously giving a word and then keeping it. So that is extremely important throughout the process.
Where did the team connection came? One, you said trusting and empowering, which you learned in Lupin, and maybe you applied that all over and gave people a lot of free hand to design and work.
Yeah.
And so let me ask you another question: is what has been the I think you covered many of that. Is there any failure, setback, or rejection that you turned around in life? Other than, I think, one you said admission in IMC in the group discussion, and you turned it around by learning. Anything else which comes to you? Any other story?
Oh, a lot of failures. I think, let me give you two examples. This is a period of 1981.
Okay.
So we had just set up the plant, and I think our capacity was something like, let's say, 20 tons per month. So we landed a huge order, or a good order, from Lakme at that time. So they had given us some 100 tons order over a period of some 5 or 6 months or so. And I think due to an additive which I bought from the market, which is not properly quality tested. When it reached the customer, it got rejected. Now it totally upset the production schedule. And being the person who had caused the trouble, I had to go in front of the customer, and rightly I said I will go in front of the customer. I sat in front of the customer, and before he blasted us, I mean, for something like, rightly he blasted for something like 10-15 minutes. I mean, so he said, I don't want to see your face, go away from there, etc., etc. So what is it I could do? I said, we made a mistake, I've goofed. And all I can do is that I will try my best to ensure that, I make up for it. And I want you to trust me. I mean, so I went to the customer, said the facts as it is, and said, you need to, what's called, give us a chance, give us an opportunity. Fortunately, I think we could set the things right. And then we went back, and then we did business with Lakme till they were acquired by Levers. Okay, so that was a huge or a big error. Another, big mistake, I would say, and which really brought our name, reputation at stake. And okay, it was our own making. We had made a blunder, and we had to set right the blunder. And I told you about giving a word and then keeping it. In 1987, we set up a company called Galaxy Surfactants Private Limited, of course, which became Galaxy Surfactants Limited later. In the initial years, we had some multiple companies for reasons of, because government used to say that you already have one unit, why do you want to, so expansions was not allowed, etc. So we had to form a different company to get land, etc. So this company, I think the initial configuration was wrong, as a result of which, by the end of third year, its accumulated losses was more than 3 times of equity. So we knew that we had to do something. So because it was a wrong configuration in terms of products that we had done. So we realized, sometimes, you are unable to accept it in the initial period. And that's how it carried on for 3 years till it comes to your neck and then, throttles you. And that is what it did. It throttled the group. In this situation, we had taken a loan from MSFC. And it came to a position where we were in default. We were not able to pay the installment and the interest. It was obviously personally very humiliating, because when you are unable to keep your word, I think it really bothers, really hits you. And I remember going to the MSFC officer who was in charge of that. And I said, I told him plainly in words, listen, I don't have money now. Give us another 3 months' time, and we will make it happen. And we will ensure that, we give. I remember that person didn't say a word. He didn't say a word. I think somewhere maybe he got, he got impressed with possibly our earnestness or whatever it is. So then he shook hands, and then we
connected with your vibes and belief that you mean it. You are not just buying time.
So we did repay it. So what we did was, I think it was a major transformation for our group. We took the hard decision of stopping all those products. We rewind, we re-engineered, and I still remember that was a start of what is called a quarterly meeting, which happened in our company. We said, we are not reviewing ourselves very properly. We need now, from now onwards, we are going to meet every quarter. We are going to review our performance. We are reviewing our operations. And I remember telling that, by the end of this year, our group profits has to become 40 lakhs of rupees. And the entire team rallied, and we did hit the target. I think that really saved us.
Very interesting. So let's say another question is, what has been the most difficult conflict you faced and how you tackled it in all this journey?
I don't think, except whatever I described the conflict or dilemma, which was that 1995 thing.
Yeah.
When you talk about conflicts, a conflict can come from where, let us say, your product doesn't meet, or there is a rejection or by the customer, which can lead to a conflict. The only way I would say is that go and face the situation head on. I think simply go there and then say, this is what has happened. Maybe you have goofed, or you have made a mistake or an error. Admit it, acknowledge it. I think this is what I tell all of our people, that when we make a mistake, go and tell the person who is impacted, because we don't have a right to earn unless until we have delivered value and the value is accepted. Till that time, we don't have a right to earn. Okay. So our job is to, of course, create value, deliver value, but the value has to be accepted by the customer ultimately. So any time these sort of, though I don't want to say it is a conflict. Because I would use the word maybe problems or setbacks that you receive, you come across.
I want you to also put some light in 2008. In 2008, where you got to establish this Jhagadia plant and Egypt plant, where everything was going in some other way. Where did you get the courage and gumption for that 500 crore investment?
Yeah. So see, then again, we knew that in line with our aspirations and in line with the expectations of our customers, we knew those were the right decisions, and also in the context of what was happening in the industry, what was happening with consumers. These were important consumer trends that were happening, particularly their requirement of non-toxic preservatives, our customers wanting to set up capacities near them, particularly, and that's how we came to Egypt or set up the plant in Egypt. So the total investment was, as you rightly said, almost about 500 crores of rupees. And we said we would raise part of this money from IPO. Okay. So you asked me about conflict. Yeah, I should say you're a conflict. So we had a very good reviews from the investor community. Our merchant bankers were very confident. They said, the company has a good history, good performance. The IPO should go through. We wanted to raise about 200 crores of rupees to finance this particular project. But then what happened was about 4 or 5 days before the IPO, something happened in the banking system. I think the entire country became very, very diffident. And except the anchor investors, I think the response from the market was extremely poor. So we were sitting, what do we need to do? With the merchant bankers. The merchant bankers suggested a course of action, which was not palatable to me. So I think in a matter of about 5 minutes, I took a decision to recall the IPO. So we withdrew the IPO and we initiated the refund process. So I think it was obviously a disappointment to many investors, but at that time we knew that was the right thing to do. So it was obviously a major conflict, and the decision rested on me. I think everybody was around, and then but I knew that that the course suggested was not palatable, was not the right thing to do. So we simply,
that's with your values basically.
We simply said withdraw the IPO, and then the IPO happened after 7 years.
So I think while you have answered this question in different ways, I'm still putting this question is, what has kept you anchored in turbulent times? You shared many of these turbulent times and you remained anchored, you took some tough calls. So give me a one layer below whatever you've shared. What has kept you anchored?
I think it's a truth that everything will pass. Nothing is permanent.
Okay.
This too shall pass. Everything will pass.
Yes.
Whether it is a turbulence or whether it is some great achievement, everything has its own time and everything will pass.
Is there any unusual habit or hobby or activity that you love?
Nothing unusual. Nothing unusual. I like reading. I like traveling, and I like playing some computer games. Okay, I mean, which possibly you may call unusual. Good time pass. Nothing. I think there is nothing unusual in this.
Any specific ritual that you follow, practically daily over the years?
Yes. I do my puja every day.
Okay.
Every day for the last at least 20, 22 years or something. This is my daily ritual routine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gives me an opportunity to be with myself. And so morning and evening, my prayers are there. I go into meditation and being with myself. So this is a ritual. Yes.
So with this 40 years of journey, what are you now looking forward in life?
See, one is how to be useful to society. I think as we go forward, it is one of how to be useful to society and how to be useful to the organization. Continue building the organization. Continue building, people. There is as far as the organization is concerned, there is a lot of room to grow and build. Of course, which will be built by successor and succession, which will happen. But for me, it will be one of, let us say, how can I be useful and contribute to society?
And my final question is, what advice would you give to a smart and a driven leader or an entrepreneur or a leader in making? What would you advise them?
I would say surround yourself with good people, talented people, but good people, because ethics is very important. Build a culture of mutual respect and trust. And as far as an organization is concerned, look at value for all the stakeholders, customers, employees, even vendors. For example, I have been enormously benefited by my vendors. My vendors have contributed significantly to our organization, its growth. So you have to ensure that you are going to create value for all the stakeholders, employees, investors, customers, vendors, and the community around you. And this is pretty important. Create more leaders, because you need to create platforms, and then and that's how you can have a succession of good, talented people, running or building your organization.
I think this has been a very very insightful session, and I learned a lot. And and what is the central theme, at least I am getting with, is that consistency of these 40 years of being centered with whatever came in between, and yet they were handled with a lot of authenticity, and with a lot of honesty of accepting the mistakes and facing it rather than sidestepping it or avoiding it, whether it was the IPO, whether it was the additive rejection or anything. So I think this is a very central theme of building that trust which you have built among all stakeholders. So thank you very much for your time and your insights.
Thank you, Rohan. Thank you.